Welcome back to this week's episode of Unlocked. I am so excited about today's episode, and I know I've said that, but sometimes I'm really not genuine when I say it, if we're being honest. But today, we have Alice Marie Johnson. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You made the special trip.
Yes, I did.
With your sister.
With my sissy.
I will say I loved that. When I asked you to do this, you were like, yeah, but I don't travel anywhere without my sister. And I was like, stop it. This is the sweetest thing ever. But thank you, first off. And second, how we met. We both said, we connected this on the phone probably like, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago when we were talking. And we met at the RNC when I was there to speak, but I was going home right after I spoke. Like I was going to go home, and then one of the nights I got invited to the women's luncheon, and I was like, well, I have to stay. Like I definitely can't leave now. Like I have to go to this. I was invited to it. This is such like an honor to be invited. I've got to go. And then I got there and I was sitting right next to you at a table, but you said, I think you weren't even supposed to go, right?
I wasn't. Initially, I was not supposed to be at that luncheon. I received an invitation the night before, and I accepted the invitation. It was not on my agenda. And when I got there, I'm so thankful that I went, Savannah, because I would not have met you.
Thank you. I will say, like, that was such a God thing. When we said that, I like got chills because I was like, you know what? We got there. Neither of us was supposed to be there. We were sitting at the same table. And then on top of that, we start talking, and we talk about Brett Tolman and Right on Crime. And we had that connection. And that was another like God wink, I like to say, is all these different connections that we have are things that happen that aren't supposed to happen. Then it leads you to meeting someone and then we just immediately hit it off.
We did. I don't call them coincidences. I call them gossidences. That was one of those times that I know that we were supposed to meet. And this year you spoke at the Criminal Justice Reform Platform. In 2020, I was the speaker on criminal justice reform.
I love that because 2020, that was it 2019 or 2020 you were released?
No, I was released 2018.
2018. Okay. You were released in 2018 and then 2020 you spoke. And that was, I watched it and it was amazing because you spoke about, for people listening that don't know Alice's story, she spent 21 years in prison for something she should have never. I mean, that is just crazy. But not only did you spend 21 years, you were sentenced to life plus 25.
Yes, life plus 25 years as a first-time nonviolent offender. And I'll tell you more about that.
Yeah, no, let's go into that. Let's go into just your story.
Okay.
And what led you to that.
Well, my story is a very unique, but yet not unique story. And things that happened in my life were unique. First of all, I grew up in Jim Crow, Mississippi. I was born and raised in Mississippi. I grew up in a small town called Olive Branch, Mississippi, that is no longer a small town. It's exploded, and now it's listed as one in the top 100 best cities in the country to live.
Holy cow.
My little hometown. But at 15 years old, I found myself pregnant and married. During that time in our history.
Yeah, during that time you could do that.
During that time.
During that time.
Yeah.
I know, she looks like she's like 50, guys. You do. I told you. Everybody here, we're like, it's crazy.
Yes, I was born in 1955.
Okay.
I grew up in a family of 8 girls, 1 boy. My family, my parents, we went to church. We were the typical Black Southern family. Faith was a very, very important part of my life. And I picked cotton. So for those who've never seen a cotton field.
Yeah.
I grew up during that time picking cotton during the time of
my grandmother
segregation.
did.
Yeah.
Both my grandmother and grandfather did in South Carolina. And I will never forget when they would come home, like when I would be staying with them, she'd get in the bath and the bath water's like black. You know, I guess because of she worked in a factory and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm like, for people that haven't seen it, I'm like, it's real.
Well, getting into a bathtub was a luxury in the beginning, but my parents began their marriage as sharecroppers. And so they were the best because they had these children that could work in the fields and do all the other labor, but they always were dreamers. They never accepted that life in Mississippi of sharecropping. And so they had plans to go, we used to say up north, Gary, Indiana, or Chicago, or other places up north where there were better paying jobs. But my mother, who was a wonderful cook and a very smart woman, she decided that we're going to get out of this, both my parents, and they knew that education was a ticket. Also, they wanted their children to go on and pursue higher educations. So my mother, she would cook. She used her skill to cook, to make food and go out to where she knew that the owner of the place that they lived on would not find out that she was making extra side money, because every single year after the crops came in, he said there was no money left over. They didn't have anything left because you charged things at the store. And so the year that they had a really big harvest, they just knew this is the year they're going to have more, but they didn't. So my mother started selling plays at black baseball games because she knew they wouldn't be there. And she made enough money. She and my father found this property 20 miles from where we lived, but it seemed like another whole city away, but it wasn't. Yeah. They found this property and they bought a prefabricated home, bought some property, and at night, after we finished everything on the farm, they slip out at night and go work on the house that we were going to move into. So the night that we left, I was only 5 years old, but I talked a lot. And so I can, it's something how you can remember moments in your life. Yeah. When I watched the movie Roots, our escape from that lifestyle was like from a scene from Roots. My sister put her hands over my mouth so I wouldn't be chattering, so that we could slip in the car with the lights off. And my cousins came and they were literally pushing the car down the road and the rest loading up the furniture. We got down the road. It was a shout of joy because we were gone. And they didn't even know we left. We left in the middle of the night. So I grew up in this our new home in Olive Branch. I made very good grades. And I met my first boyfriend. He could do the popcorn so good.
What the heck's a popcorn?
The popcorn. I mean, you had to the popcorn was really a very popular dance. Oh my God. But that's what attracted me to him. And I grew up very sheltered. Yeah. The next thing I know, my first boyfriend, my first everything, I'm pregnant. Oh. And you just didn't walk around during that time pregnant without a husband. Yeah. So I found myself married at 15 and pregnant, and couldn't go to school that year because they didn't allow us to go to school with a big belly. So I had my friends give me.
That's so crazy to think.
It was crazy. Look at now.
Like that.
Look at these days now. But my friends would bring me their books, and I would take their tests and read their textbooks like they were novels, preparing myself to go back and not be behind. Yeah. So when I went back, they said that I had to go back because that was my 10th grade year that I missed. And my class had gone on to to be juniors. Not junior high, but to be juniors. And I told them I know the coursework. And they didn't believe me. My mother fought for me. We went to the Board of Education. So they went to another school and got them to put together the hardest test that they could in all the subjects. And they snickered, didn't think I could pass, and I made a 98%. And so they let me skip. I graduated on time. I only tell you this story to put these details in there because I want you to know that against every odd that has been in my life, Savannah, I never looked at the obstacle I looked at it as an opportunity to prove what I can do.
Yeah.
And so that really set the course of my life, was fighting. I've always been a fighter all of my life. Usually it wasn't fighting for myself, it was fighting for others. Don't even think you're going to bully my friends or my family.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming, because I can fight.
Hey, that's my kind of girl.
I can fight. Don't mess up and let me we call it the...
What? You got to tell me now.
Well, I got this name from someone else, but it's what I could do. It's called the Tennessee Nutcracker.
Yes.
The Tennessee Nutcracker. You don't want none of this for real.
No. I love that.
Yes.
Well, I love that, like you said, against all odds.
Against all odds. So everything that has confronted me in life, from fighting to graduate from high school, to beat those odds. And then I didn't get a college degree, but I went to 3 different colleges, taking my children with me. And sometimes the students would feel so sorry for me that they would watch my children while I go to class. And every job that I had, I'd always promote, because I had really strong work ethics. But my 15-year-old self getting married as a mother and wife was totally different from my husband, who was a little older, him getting married to me and doing what was right, because he still saw himself as single. And even to this day, my children still call him by his first name. He wants them to call him daddy, and they try to call him daddy. And but he just lived.
But it's like anything in life, like having the title of mother, father,
don't mean that's who
friend,
you are.
Whatever it is, like that's an earned
It's
title.
earned if you're not present. But I have forgiven him a long time ago.
Yeah.
But my life definitely would have gone in a different direction. But still, it's what you make out of it. I could type very fast. My senior year of high school, I would go half day to a secretarial college. I could type like 90 some words a minute with no errors.
Dear God, I need you in my life. I'm over here like,
Oh,
you
no,
know.
I'm a good typer. But you know what? I got fast fingers. I have good hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
So every job I get, I go in through my skills to type, as in the secretarial pool or as a clerk. And like this, I move up because I've always been a hard worker.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to, I knew I had to be the best at whatever I do. I've always been like that. And so from jobs I integrated the offices in my town. I was the first Black person to get an office job.
Wow.
And it happened to be an office job at the plant where my father was working. My parents sent my siblings to college, and they all now, my remaining siblings, they all have careers that read like who's who in Black America. And they came from sharecroppers who had a determination and the faith that we could do anything. My father used to tell me, Savannah, because he called me by my middle name, Marie. He would say, Marie, you can do anything. And I believed it too.
Well, see, and that's the thing is when you grow up like that and you have that reinforcement that tells you that, but also when you know, like, I'm getting out of here. Like, I'm not, this doesn't have to be my life.
I've never given up on life, on anything. One of the last jobs that I had, I entered in their clerical pool was with FedEx. And in no time, I had promoted. Within 3 years, I was a manager in computer operations. Didn't even know anything about computers. But what I had was great interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
And they had all people who were in that field. And I convinced them that you need someone who can lead. And I knew that once I got the job, and I sold myself. I mean, I really sold them the idea of they needed someone to balance the other managers off.
Yeah.
And so they hired me in computer operations, and I became one of the best ones there because I learned how to bring everything down from a shutdown, bring it up from a cold start. I knew how to look at the interface boards, troubleshoot. I taught myself that. And from that, I went on to become a customer support manager. And then I started training. I graduated from...
And how old were you at the time?
At the time, I was 27, 8.
Okay.
When I started FedEx, it was 1984, 81 when I started there. And my career was 10 years with them.
Wow.
And so I received all kind of honors and awards from FedEx. I started the first quality action team. Everything was a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Me and my husband had 5 children, and I was not the type of person who was a party person because I had to take care of my kids.
You had kids to raise.
Had kids to raise because I had to do it. I'm married, but I'm living single because my ex-husband loved to go out and do things. And
at that time, too, you just didn't get divorced.
You didn't get divorced.
You just tough it up.
It seems like every year, Savannah, my husband and I were breaking up. We'd break up and he begged to come back. I'd take him back in. Then I'd hear about he's got a baby over there. He ended up having a couple of kids during the course of our marriage. And I still took him back until the very end.
Well, that's because you saw your kids.
I wanted my children to have both their parents.
Yeah.
But they didn't really know him that much because he just was not a present father. But I never talked bad about my husband to my children.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been damaging. They had to get to know him for themselves, but even they didn't have the best relationship with him because he was a disciplinarian when he was there without even knowing what was going on in our house. You can discipline if the person you're disciplining know you love them.
Yes, exactly. That's what my dad would always say. He was like, I'm here to be your parent, not your best friend.
Thank you.
Like, I'm here to be your parent, but you will never walk away wondering if I love you. Like, I'm doing this because I love you.
Because I love you.
Yeah.
And what does the word say? The one who the Lord loves, that's who he chastens. You're a son or you're a daughter. So don't despise the chastening of the Lord. So that our marriage lasted 19 years. And the year that we divorced, even though we'd been separated, it still was a shock because this is all I've known. Yeah. I'm 15.
Since you were 15 years old.
Since I was 15, this is my husband.
I could not imagine.
Since I was 15, so I was 34 when we finally divorced. And it was shock. It hit me in my gut. Even though our marriage was really bad, that still hit me in my gut. And it took me a while before I date. When I did start dating, I made some real bad choices. I eventually got with someone who was a professional gambler. Oof. And I started gambling with him. And that was so exciting, Savannah. The bright lights and all of the excitement. Because I've been at home.
Because you had some control,
I did. I'm finally out, but it was the wrong kind of out. In fact, that's the reason I lost my job, was gambling, loaning him some money that I could not.
And he promised he was going to give it back to you.
He promised he was giving it back, and he didn't. I was devastated. And bills started coming in. I was buying my home. I was about to go into bankruptcy. Everything. I took a job, but it wasn't enough because I had been used to making a really good salary. Yeah. I've got a child in college, another one about to go to college. And so this offer came to me. My lights were literally about to be shut off. A offer came for me to be what is called a telephone mule. In fact, he gave them my number. And all I had to do was when they called me and come in town, because I didn't even know he was in that lifestyle. Yeah. I thought he was just a gambler. And when I told him, he said, "Did you tell him me?" I said, "Do you know someone who does that?" He said, "You're looking at me." And so I was shocked because it took me a couple of days to even tell him what had come to me as an offer. And so that's how this conspiracy started. He gave them my number. They came in. The first time he gave me $1,000. I don't even know what he made, but I know he made more than $1,000. Yeah. That literally paid my utilities and put food on my table. I was in a panic. And really, I was pushing away from that because I'm so scared. I've never been criminally minded in my life. I've never committed a crime, never been arrested. And just when I can't do this, my son gets killed. My youngest son was killed in a terrible scooter accident. He was 12 and his brother was 14. I didn't have any insurance because my insurance is lapsed. I'm not working. And I couldn't even pay for his funeral. So here I am again on this roller coaster. And I was like a zombie, honestly. Didn't care about nothing. I'm in this conspiracy. I hate it. And I'm totally against drugs. I don't glamorize this stuff. But Savannah, I was definitely not a queen pin. I did have the phone numbers. That's what they labeled me, as a queen pin. If I was a queen pin, I was the worst queen pin in history. Because everyone else had fancy cars and houses and something for them to seize.
Yep.
At my arrest, I had $500 in the bank, behind on a house payment, and driving a Mazda.
Make that make sense.
Make it make sense. And so when someone got busted, they had my number. And they were trying to, they started connecting me to this. And then my phone records had these calls on it, which were not drug calls. Some of them were relatives in Texas.
Yeah.
And we were talked back and forth. And in fact, to add insult to this whole thing, I received a call from Colombia the day my son was killed. It's because my cousin was married to, that's where she lived. And she'd heard about my son was killed. And I never even took the call. Because I was sedated. I was totally out of my mind, out of my head. Because I had to, when my son got hit, my 14-year-old, he was traumatized.
I could only imagine.
And it was, because he had to stand there and watch his brother and beg the Lord not to take him. And so he was totally traumatized. And I had to be the one to make the decision, because it was a brain injury, that he was brain dead. I had to make the decision, and I passed out. And that was the last thing. When the beep went away, I literally passed out. And so there's no way that I spoke to someone about drugs that day, that night, when I'm not even coherent. No. They've given me medication. A family member took the call from, was just taking calls saying she's, giving them a report on how I was doing. So at my trial, they showed that date as a date, the one date, and that's why they called it a Colombian drug. All of this stuff that they put out there was based upon that phone call that came in from Colombia, that I didn't even talk to anyone. But
it just goes to show too
how things can happen.
People don't realize.
They don't realize how
what the government will do.
The extent
to get their narratives.
I was offered, first of all, no time if I would go along with their narrative. And then they met me and my attorney in a room, and I was offered 3 years. And my attorney said, there is no way you should take the offer. He said, you're going to mess up. You're going to have a felony record. There's no drugs. You have no money. And he kept saying, where's the beef? So with his advice, I turned down the 3-year plea deal, and I fought. They gave me a very low bond, and he saw that as evidence that they knew that I was not a queen pin.
Yeah, because if you were, they either would not have given you bond, or
I would not have gotten the bond. Yes.
It would have been so high that you would have sat there.
It was a $10,000 bond. I paid $1,000, and I was free for 2 years, and the others who testified against me couldn't get a bond. In fact, the real kingpin, they gave him the 3 years they offered me. And he testified against me and didn't even know what I looked like. He pointed out a co-defendant and said, that's Alice. Another one said that he'd been to my house 20 times. No one has ever been to my house bringing drugs to me ever.
Yeah.
And when the map, I said, I don't know him and he don't know me. I'm sorry, he was a kingpin. The other guy was someone who'd been locked up who definitely didn't know me.
Yeah.
He pointed out my co-defendant as me. But this particular person, I got a map, a big map, because I knew he was lying because I'd never seen him before.
Yeah.
And I told my attorney to tell him to show you where I live on this map. And his hands was trembling. He went to it and he pointed all the way into Arkansas. I had lived totally different. So each time the courtroom would be erupting with laughter, but it was not a laughing matter. So I honestly did not think, because there was no drugs in my case, it was testimony. So I'm thinking that there's no way. My attorney kept telling me there's no way you're going to be found guilty, because there's no physical drugs.
Yeah.
They had to bring drugs in from another case to show the jury to say, now this is what drugs look like. This is what.
But they never found drugs on you. Never.
No.
Yeah.
And then you get a money laundering charge anyway, because they said you had to have money to launder the money, but I didn't have any in my bank to show.
You had $500.
I had $500. So where is the laundered money? That's what I'm telling you. I had to be the worst queen pin in history. So after 6 weeks, I was found guilty by an 11-person jury of attempted possession of, I think it was 106. And by the time that I went to sentencing 7 months later, the prosecutor said, I estimate based on the testimony and this calculation that if this was happening, you had to be bringing this in this many a week, which wasn't even happening.
No.
He said, I estimated to be 2,000 to 3,000. And I'm like, where?
And what do you mean when you say 2,000 to 3,000?
Kilograms, that's what they said. They found me guilty of 100 attempted possession. I think it was 106, because that was what people testified to. Some people, they got them out of jail.
And some people got a deal
to testify. All got a deal. They got them. People were jumping on my case who didn't even know anyone on my case.
Yep.
Because now you can get a reduced sentence if you testify good enough. So what do you think? I didn't have a record, but the people who were testifying had long records, and they knew the game. I was ignorant that the first one who accepts a plea get the best deal. Mm-hmm. So I'm holding out, and I'm going to trial. 4 of us go to trial. One of them never didn't go to prison. The jury was hung on one issue, but the jury was hung in my trial for almost a week, and we were getting reports, and I even saw the notes that came in asking to explain conspiracy. So
that's my thing is, and that's what people don't realize when it comes to being a juror. I have heard it a gazillion times. Well, your parents got convicted by a jury of their peers. Mm-hmm. It is not a jury of your peers, number one. Number two, people don't know the importance of being a juror.
Some do not realize. And even hearing later on from someone who a juror spoke to them later, many years later, and they were devastated when they heard the sentence that I received, because they didn't feel that I deserved such a sentence as that.
And what was your sentence for people listening?
Life plus 25 years in prison. When I found out that I was receiving life, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a mistake. My whole family thought it was a mistake.
Did you know that Livestrong says in order to get that perfect body, well, you got to start now. Diet, exercise, and do all the crazy things, but don't expect to lose any belly fat for up to 2 months. And y'all know that timeline didn't really work for me. I kind of like instant gratification. Shocker. Welcome to 2024. And let's face it, I believe that you should have the summer body year round and not just during summer. But that means that at certain times, if you cut 500 calories a day, you can lose 4 pounds a month. At 4 pounds a month, you've basically lost half your life, okay? It's your choice. Weeks or months of calorie counting and boot camp gyms, or lose the fat in inches in one single visit to Sono Bello. Sono Bello is the only way to permanently lose fat and inches. Sono Bello doctors are masters in micro laser fat removal, a faster, comfortable one-visit technique. Wherever you have stubborn fat, tummy, sides, thighs, arms, or sagging, loose, jiggly skin, smile, because it's gone permanently. Sono Bello gives you your curves back. No more feeling embarrassed, shy, and uncomfortable. No more hiding under baggy clothes instead of shorts and tees. You can give yourself the gift of a full body reset. Learn about one-visit micro laser fat removal. Schedule your free consultation and ask about Sono Bello's spectacular summer savings going on now. Visit sonobello.com/unlocked. That's sonobello.com/unlocked. If you followed me for a while, then you know I absolutely love food. I just do. All my friends do. We cook, we grill out. And one of the things I love most is bread. It is just my go-to. I think it's I mean, let's face it, it's a comfort food. But just because it's summer, it doesn't mean that you have to cut out all the carb-heavy foods that you love. Hero Bread actually reinvented the bread and buns that make summer so great. Fluffy, delicious flavor and texture with no net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and fewer calories. Plus, protein and fiber. And now you can try their sweet melt in your mouth Hawaiian rolls for guilt-free summer sliders. Guys, this has been a game changer for me. I want to enjoy food, but I also want to be a little healthier. I need to get that protein in, less carbs, and Hero Bread is the way to go. You can get enough fiber, cut down on sugar, and add more protein just by consuming their bread. It is absolutely amazing. All your favorites, no consequences or compromises. 0 to 1 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and high in fiber. Delicious and flavorful. The soft, fluffy experience you love when enjoying a juicy hot dog, refreshing BLT, or mouth-watering cheeseburger. Something for every craving, including sliced bread loaves, buns, and tortillas, mouth-watering limited edition bakes like the popular 2-gram net carb Hero Croissant. Keep the carbs out of summer without compromising flavor with Hero Bread. Get 10% off your order at hero.co and use code UNLOCKED at checkout. That's unlocked at hero.co. And so, question, with that, when you were at sentencing, what did the government ask for? And what did the judge?
The government asked for life plus 25.
And that's what the judge gave you?
And that's what the judge gave me based upon mandatory minimums and what the prosecutor had put as the number. As I say, it went all the way up to 2,000 to 3,000. That word estimate, which you can no longer do that. You have to have an exact.
Good.
And so I would have been out of prison long ago, but when the laws passed, they weren't retroactive. So they didn't apply to me, so I was still in prison. But Savannah, it was a shock to me because I never knew that a life sentence was possible for me. I thought that murderers, only the worst people got a sentence of life. And in federal prison, there's no parole. So I got life without the possibility of parole because there's no parole in the federal system. And
I will, like I've said it on my podcast before, but no one knows the feeling.
No one
of
knows
when you're
it.
standing in a courtroom and you hear them ask for life.
I honestly could not believe it. But the one thing that was like really motivated me in prison was my judge said that I needed to go to a facility where they could take care of my mental health, my mental needs. Because basically a woman such as yourself, when you come to realize that you're never coming home, because I was supposed to be a corpse, come out in a body bag, you would need someone that can deal with your mental health, that will be able to treat you. And when she said that, that old fighter stood up in me. And I thought to myself, I leaned forward. And I couldn't say it because I was already, what more could they do to me? I should have. But I thought to myself, you'll lose your mind before I lose mine.
I love that.
I really did. I thought you will lose your mind before I lose mine. So when I went to prison, when I was in that jail in that cell closed behind me, Savannah, I literally dropped on that concrete on my knees and I asked God, whatever he has for me, reveal it to me. Because this was madness, really. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know how I could possibly get a sentence like that, not having a criminal record. There was no violence whatsoever in my case. No fights, no knives, no guns.
No drugs even found.
Testimony, no drugs found. It was what they call in prison ghost dope. And that's testimony of what people say that they did.
Yeah.
I had to wrap my head around that. But I had something that was really driving me, and that was the expectation that I was going to go crazy in prison.
Yeah, you're like, I'll be damned if that happens.
Thank you.
And were you in a medium security or low?
Most female prisons, unless you are maximum security, are medium. So I never went to a maximum security facility. And the first prison that they sent me was 1,500 miles away from my family because I'm living in Memphis at this time.
And that was also before there was the
First Step Act.
First Step Act,
Yes.
where you have to be within 500 miles of your home.
Yes, for sure. The First Step Act was signed the year that I came out. I fought for that First Step Act. In fact, they called me the face of the First Step Act.
Good. If anyone deserves that title.
But I was sent 1,500 miles away in Dublin. And when I got there, I saw women that were miserable.
Yeah.
They were miserable. And many of them had less time than I had. My very first day on that compound, it was this lady in this wheelchair. And I guess I looked lost. And she asked me my name, and I told her, and she said, Alice, she said, bloom where you're planted. God knows where you are. That dropped inside of me. It became substance. It became something I could cling to. God knows where I am.
Yeah.
And my steps got lighter. He knows where I am. And I started just doing incredible things at the prison.
In Dublin.
In Dublin.
And how long were you there?
I was only there for a year. But in that 1 year, I changed a system of education. They put me in vocational technical because of my computer skills. So here I am in my interviewing skills.
Yeah.
Women who were getting ready to go home. Savannah, it was my job to give them mock interviews, to prepare them for job interviews, to teach them typing, to teach them how to read job listings, to help them get a resume together, to teach them basic computer skills. And the thing that I noticed was that there were no women in there who had long sentences. And I asked the question, why? And they said, Miss Alice, they always call me Miss Alice. They said, Miss Alice, they said, we can't take those classes because why would they waste their time on us? I went back to my room that night and I was just walking the floor and I was thinking, how do you tell a woman not to hope? How do you tell a woman not to prepare herself for a future? So I decided to write it up, to file a grievance about it. I did, and I argued my point to the warden, and she agreed with me because I argued that when women, anyone has hope, but when you have people who are locked up who have hope, they're less violent because they've got something that they're striving for. And so they changed the rule that you had to be within 2 years, 18 months to take those classes. Now, a certain percentage had to go to what we call the long timers, to people with life and long sentences. And that just opened up other prisons had to do it because there was a precedent now set.
And when you give people hope, like you said, it automatically makes it a much safer environment for everyone. And that is when you are offering, and that's what I say, is more of these facilities need to offer actual classes that prepare you for when you leave, whether you're learning a skill or to where you can go out, step foot outside and you can get a job. But people don't realize how hard it is to exit prison and get a job.
It's very difficult, but I can say that they're doing better now with helping with preparedness, having jobs, having certifications that you can get. My friend Cheryl, she would tell people when I left Dublin who were in that class, she wouldn't let my name die. She would tell them when there were long timers came in, she said, you've got Alice Johnson to thank for being in this class. She opened that door for you. So I left Dublin. I go to Federal Medical Center, Carswell. And that was a shock because I would get there, but they needed regular people. I'm going to call them people who didn't have any who could work, who didn't have any work restrictions. That's what I call regular people. Not that everyone is not regular. But I saw people in wheelchairs. I saw people on a hospice
Because
floor.
what a lot of people don't realize is the way these facilities run are from the men and women that are serving time there. These men and women.
We do everything.
Do everything.
We cook, we clean.
And what's so, to me, what's so tough for me is to see the lack of humanity and decency of you've got these men and women who are cooking and cleaning, and then
not only cooking and cleaning, but working for the prison industry.
Yes, working for the prison industry, which is the only form of slave labor left.
Yeah.
The only form. You get 5-10 cents an hour.
Well, you get, let me back up just a little bit, because my first job that they gave me was in the prison industry, because they realized I had such good skills. They put me there, told me that's where I need to go, because it paid 23 cents an hour. But I was really good at what I was doing. And my supervisor called me in. She was so proud of my work. I was doing, I think it was an Adobe Illustrator. I was doing that work, and I could do it really fast. Always good with my hands. She was so proud. She said, I got a promotion. I hadn't even been there a month. And she told me that the things that I was doing were selling. They sold them for $1,500 each. I was doing 10 a day, way up to what the grade level was higher. I quit my job that day.
Yeah,
because I said, I'm working literally to keep myself in prison, and I never worked for the prison industry again. Never.
Good for you.
Never. I could not.
Good for you, because that's what people don't. Unicor, I did a whole thing about them
Unicor is
on my
where I was
Instagram,
working, and I was making them so much money that I refused to ever work for Unicor again.
Yeah,
even though that's where they consider the top pay of $1.
The top that's the top jobs that you want, and I even said that about Unicor with where my dad's at. They've got these men who go and pick up, the sheets and the laundry from hospitals and local hotels, and they'll go and wash them and then take them back. And these men, what they're having to do, and they're doing it without protective gear, and they're touching soiled linens from a hospital, and then they're not even washing them with detergent because they haven't bought any detergent, but yet they've billed for the detergent. It's when the amount of fraud that happens and the abuse of these men and women that are in these jobs.
It's a crazy, crazy setup. You have prisoners who are, when you call for travel, some of the travel agencies, the big travel for the industries, they'll use prison labor. Or for the information calls, you're on the phone with a prisoner and you don't know you're on the call with a prisoner. Yeah, it's a lot. The call centers, they have call centers, and they'll have different jobs for the call center, and it's a prisoner that you're talking to.
That is, and that's something too. And that's why I've said when I've spoken about this isn't a left or right issue.
It's not,
because Senator Cory Booker is huge on ending slave labor in the prisons.
It is 100% slave labor.
And what's so sad, too, is racism is very much still alive in our prison system. Very much still alive. And there in Pensacola, Florida, you see they will send, and it's crazy, but the majority of the men that work out in the field are men of color.
Oh, yeah.
And they're sending them to go and work out in a field, even when there's black flag warnings, which mean everyone goes inside. But yet these prisoners are forced to still work outside in the fields, no matter how hot it is.
No matter how hot it is. And in state prisons, you wouldn't believe the number of prisons that don't have air conditioning. In some of the hottest places. In some of the hottest places, they have no air conditioning. And we know what kind of temperature is. And they talk about leaving a child in a car.
Yeah, you talk about leaving a child in a car or a dog in a car.
A dog.
Or
Let's not say a child. Let's say a dog, an animal in a car.
You will get charged if you leave a dog in a hot car.
Yes.
But yet, I've said this time and time again, because where my mom is, she's in Kentucky. It gets hotter than the hinges of hell there. And there's no air conditioning. And it's in a building that was on an old poppy field. And so the way the building is, there is no proper ventilation, even like with the windows and the way it sits up, where it's located. And so there are times where it will be over 100 degrees, and even all the stuff they buy from commissary goes bad. And whether it's stuff melts or it gets too hot, you can't eat stuff that gets, you'll be sick throwing up.
There's no refrigerator.
No.
In the rooms, of course.
No.
I hear people talk about club fed. I'm like, you have lost your mind.
Thank you.
They've got this image of club fed that it's a cot and 3 hots. What do you think those 3 hots consist of?
I would love to know.
I'm going to tell you, in one prison that I was in, one of the cooks got in a lot of trouble because she took the label off of the box of some of the meat. And we were sitting there when it was that stew meat, I wouldn't eat it.
Well, no,
because I found hairs in it. I found bristle hairs. And she pulled the label off and she brought it back to the unit. She slipped it out. She ended up going to the hole, to the shoe for it. But on the label, it said,
not for human consumption.
Not for human consumption. It was zoo meat. Literally meat meant for the animals in the zoo. And that's what we were being fed.
And this is in a federal prison system that has a $9 billion budget every year. $9 billion for 123 facilities, and you're 30 to 40% understaffed.
Well,
so where's all the money going?
I don't know if you know this, Savannah, but the female population has exploded. And it has exploded because of the conspiracy laws, the mandatory minimum laws.
Yep.
It exploded over 700%. So there were not enough female prisons. So they started crowding them into little bitty spaces. One of the prisons that I was at was built for only 2 people. They said there would never be more than 2 people. They started stacking beds on top to the point that on the top floor, the floor started cracking. And the fire marshal was giving them notification, was fining them, and they said it was cheaper to pay the fine than to build another prison. So it was literally inhumane situations. The space, and we were on concrete in an animal shelter. Animals are not allowed to be that crowded in a little cage. But we were so crowded that at stand-up count, we could not stand. We had to slant to be counted. There was no space in there. It was extremely dangerous to be living like that. Some things have started to get somewhat better, but there's still inhumane conditions.
Well, and that's what I've
prison.
said is with the conditions of these prisons. And I go off of what I know for sure to be a fact of what my mom's experiencing, and then what I've had men and women come to me and say. And the fact that for mom's facility, it was condemned. The building was condemned, and it was built on an old poppy field. It used to be, back in the day, they would house people to try different drugs on them, like pharmaceutical drugs. And then they condemned it, brought it out, said we're turning it into a prison. And one of the correctional officers told me that he will not drink the water from that facility. And I said, why is that? He said, well, I brought drug test in with me one day to work. And he said, and it's off the charts when you test the water. You don't even have clean drinking water. And I hear people say to me, they'll be like, oh, but guess what? That's what they deserve. That's what they deserve.
You do the crime, you do the time.
And what is your response when people say that?
The time should be fair, based upon the crime, not these crazy sentences that they're giving out. And the time should also be humane time.
It should be what the judge ordered.
It's what the judge ordered. Sometimes you'll have, I hate to say this, but sometimes you have really psychos out there who enjoy imposing more on prisoners than they should be receiving.
And what people don't realize, as a judge, as a federal judge, you have that seat for life. It takes an act of God to have a federal judge removed.
It's almost impossible to do it. And the thing is, the time that they're sentenced to, the punishment is to be out of society and away from your family. It does not mean that you should have inhumane conditions while you're doing that time. Savannah, I saw women literally lose their minds. They couldn't take it. So I understand that you would think someone who's never been to prison, facing life plus 25 years, and literally told that you will be returning to your family as a corpse, that would break me. But I picked up my pen and I started writing. I started writing plays, and I saw what it did to what a woman felt about herself and her value, because many are in there because of drugs or mental health issues, or I'm going to say abuse, because they've been beaten down.
That's what I was about to say. You see a lot of women who are there who follow a man, and they're caught up in conspiracy. That's the number one reason that you find women in prison, is that they're caught in a conspiracy. Yeah. Many like myself were single mothers trying to take care of our families, made mistakes, but should I lose my life over this worst decision that I've ever made in my life? Yeah. To be involved in something like this. Well, and that's the thing. That's what I say to people all the time. And it's so, criminal justice reform is not something that is cool. It's not something cool that people care about. But when you look at it from a Christian perspective, there is no way. I see so many Christians that just want to turn a blind eye to it.
Because they don't know. They feel that everyone is there, deserve to be there. Everyone who's there don't deserve to be in there, and especially serving these long, inhumane sentences. You put people in prison, first, one of the things is for retribution, to pay for your crime. Yeah. You keep them in there to keep the community safe. And you want to make sure that they have reformed, that they have rehabilitated. When they pose no safety risk to the community, when the retribution is too much, when they have rehabilitated, why are they still there causing the taxpayers, from a financial standpoint, causing taxpayers more than what education costs, to house people in prison who absolutely should not be there like that? The time does not fit the crime. It does not. And even as Christians, there's a scripture in the book of James that says, mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy has to be tempered with judgment. You can't just say, I'm going to hand out these sentences like candy, because when one person goes to prison, the entire family goes with them. When your parents went, you went with them. Your life was impacted. You're missing the nurturers in your family.
And what people don't realize is what you just said, it affects the whole family.
And the community.
Chances of having a child incarcerated or suffering from anxiety, depression, suicide, teen pregnancy, the chances of those happening are drastically increased.
My son went to prison, who became my youngest son, the 14-year-old. Yeah. He was a teenager when I went to prison. And he lost his brother. He was traumatized. We didn't get any mental health counseling for that, because this came right after that. And he suffered while I was gone. He started using drugs himself. He was one that just fell through the cracks. It's like he was dropped.
He was just another number.
He was dropped and no one picked him up. He was only a teenager, suffering from trauma. Now you've lost your best friend, your youngest brother. They're 2 years apart. And now you're being told that your mother is never coming home. My family was totally shattered when I went to prison. And honestly,
that's the thing is, a lot of people forget the family.
They forget
They
their
forget
families.
the kids. And I will never forget the judge in our case when we asked for staggered sentencing. The judge looked back and she saw a whole row of us, and she asked where Chloe's biological mother was. And keep in mind, Chloe was adopted by my parents. Chloe doesn't know another mother. She doesn't know another father. Like, she knows mom and dad is mom and dad. So for the staggered sentencing, and for people listening that don't know what that is, it's when you allow one parent to serve their time and then the other go and serve it. But, you know, Chloe's never known any other parents
That's
other
her
than my
mama.
parents.
That's her dad.
Yeah. And the judge asked, well, where's her biological mother? And that was no place for her to ask that question, especially that she has no ties to her. And then the prosecutors proceeded to say, well, you know, I bet her biological father will take her with. And the judge looks back and goes, well, you know what? There's a whole row of people back there that I bet would be happy to raise these kids. I'm denying it.
Wow.
And to see just the lack of empathy in these courtrooms, it does something to you, and it does something to kids to see both your parents go away.
It does.
Like, to something in you dies when that happens. It just does. But then I have my fight in me.
Yes.
That from the day, I will never forget when that guilty verdict came down. I didn't even stay to listen to 17, 19 counts of guilty. After about 6 of them, I got a pretty good idea of where this was going. And I immediately got up and I started getting on the phone. And I started calling people, and there was a judge here in Nashville who said, if my life was on the line, this is the lawyer I would hire. And that day, I hired that lawyer. I said, I need you to be at the house tomorrow so we can go over everything.
You have to fight. From the day I went in, my family never stopped fighting. I never stopped fighting. This was not me just waiting for Kim Kardashian to show up and hear about my case. Yeah. I fought the entire time. But one thing that I didn't allow myself to do, and that's live in this bubble of not being in reality. The reality is I'm here. Yeah. And the reality is I'm alive. The reality is I'm not going to get busy with looking for death. I'm going to get busy living life. And so I'm not going to lose my mind, and I'm going to live. And so what can I do? What can I do to make my community better? What can I do to have a quality of life here while I fight? And so I started fighting for the women in prison.
And you ended up speaking, was it at Yale, Harvard?
I spoke at, this is crazy, I know. But the first time my image got out, the ACLU did a campaign that showed people who were serving life and who had not committed a violent crime. And out of almost 4,000 people, I was selected. And there were 2 women and 4 men. So I'm all in newspapers, magazines. I'm one of their poster children for this whole project. That was 2013. In 2016, I was asked to speak on a radiothon at the Poets. I think it's a Poets Club in D.C. So I was the only prisoner that spoke that day, and it was a clemency radiothon. Clemency and Criminal Justice Radiothon. And then I was asked to speak at Hunter's College, Yale University, University of Washington in Seattle, New York University, and then on Google and YouTube platforms. And you know what? My prison let me do it. I had no idea that was how strange that was. But they gave me a paper and said, as long as you don't talk negative about the prison. Because really, I'm 20 years in at that, almost 20 years in at that point, and I've never been in trouble. In fact, they called me in to help diffuse the trouble. Because I had a lot of respect from staff, a lot of respect from my peers, from the other women there. Many of them called me Mama Alice and not just Miss Alice. So they knew I wasn't going to be doing anything crazy, so I never did. So I spoke on these platforms. and kept fighting. The Clemency Project 2014 came along. I thought I was a perfect candidate. I was left behind. And so I was supposed to lose all hope with that. But instead, no, we kept fighting. And they said when
And the Clemency Project of 2014.
it was looking for people who had served 10 years, who didn't have a history of violence, who had good conduct. I fit every...
You fit the bill.
I fit it. I knew, even the staff, that everybody was rooting for me. And then I saw President Obama getting on that plane, waving goodbye. And I'm sitting at the table, and I couldn't help but a tear rolled down my face because it hit me. I'm left behind. And I prayed, and I heard this word literally in my spirit, resurrection. And I said, yes, something has to die before it can be resurrected. Jesus is the resurrection. I'm telling you, I got up excited. Everyone would say, Miss Alice, are you okay? And my answer would be, Jesus is the resurrection. And I knew that somehow I was still coming home. And everyone was saying, even to my family, after President Trump won, you can forget it, because he is not going to do anything with criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
But I still...
Because it's not a Republican thing.
Well, remember this. The heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord, and so is the heart of the president. And he will be the one to do stuff that was totally unprecedented. Most presidents wait until the end of their term to start granting clemencies. He had been in office 2 years. Not 2 years. He came officially in 2017 after the 2016 election. So in 2018, a year, not even 2 years into his presidency, my case is taken to him. And I'm sure people want to know, how did that happen?
Kim Kardashian.
Kim Kardashian. How in the world did Kim Kardashian hear about me? Someone who was at a YouTube event heard me speaking, and they reached out to see if I would do a video op-ed. I'd never done that before. Everyone who I'd had favor with, from the warden to the case manager to the captain, they're gone.
Oh,
But guess
God.
what I have, Savannah?
God.
Guess what I have? The piece of paper that says I can do it.
That's amazing.
I had this paper, and I just made a decision. I'm not asking permission. I have it right here.
Yep.
And if anything goes down, I'm going to fight that too.
Exactly.
And it did go down.
Shocker.
Shocker, yeah. So I did the video op-ed. Kendall with Mike, the reporter with Mike, said she felt, because the video visits only last 20 minutes.
Yep.
She said she felt such a strong presence of God in that room talking to me. She said she knew this was the one. I did it, and they reduced it down, I think, to 3 minutes and like 40-some seconds. And that thing took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
From the time they started sharing it with different people they knew in their network, it started a world movement. That first day, I didn't know what any of the technical terms were because there was no internet when I went to prison. So they said, Miss Alice, they were talking at the side of their mouth. Some of the staff walked by, Miss Alice, you're trending. I'm like, what is that?
What is that? What does that mean?
So then they said, Miss Alice, you just went viral. I'm like, they're getting ready to put me under the prison because I just introduced a virus into the internet. I'm done. I know they're getting ready to drag me away.
Yeah.
Because I just crashed the internet. But I found out that viral was a good thing. Then I get a call from an attorney call. They called me in the back and said that I had a call from an attorney, and it was Sean Holly, Kim Kardashian, the Kardashian and Jenner family's lawyer. I picked the phone up, and she says that a very famous and rich client of mine would like to help you get out of prison and would like to hire me to do it. Would you like that? I said, let me think about it. Yes.
Yes, please.
Are you kidding? And so I called my daughter. And asked her to Google, because she didn't tell me who her client was. I said, please Google Sean Holly and see who her clients are. And my daughter started reading the list off. She said the Kardashians and Jenner. And I think they had been just, at one time, they were Michael Jackson's lawyer. She was Michael Jackson's lawyer, but she has a list of very famous clients. And when she said the Jenners, I knew the name Kris Jenner. I got it. I know who it is. It's Kris Jenner. She had just been on a TV show, and I happened to be in the room and saw her. I think it was on Ellen. And my daughter said, Mama, what if it's Kim Kardashian? And I said, Kim, who? She said, you don't know who Kim Kardashian is? And I said, who is that? And she go on to explain to me who Kim is. And I found out the next day or two that it was Kim. And after that, Kim and I started talking on the phone.
Wow.
She brought in a whole new set of attorneys to put new eyes on my case. She even hired one in Memphis so that he could see if he could go through the courts. But they told her she needs clemency. But it's President Trump who's in office. And, people don't normally get clemencies that quick.
Yeah.
And so she knew Ivanka Trump, so she reached out to Ivanka. Ivanka gave it to Jared.
And Jared
was his,
backbone, really. The first step
right
back.
hand right there. And they went to work. They dubbed themselves Team Alice. So I've got Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Kim Kardashian, a famous attorney, Sean Hawley, Jennifer Turner with the ACLU, Brittany Barnett, a very well-known attorney, and Mike Scholl out of Memphis. They are working hard for 7 months. He's working in Memphis to get a sentence reduction. Kim, people were telling Kim, what does she know about criminal justice reform? She was perfect because she was not bound by opinions about it. She just knew that if she could do something to save my life, she's going to do it.
Yeah.
And so whatever she's got to do, she put her brand on the line. She didn't care. We came to know each other. And I'm so glad that I didn't know who she was, because when we finally met, I didn't meet a celebrity. I met a friend. And 7 months, she kept trying to get a meeting with President Trump. And on my birthday, Savannah, they finally get that meeting. That seemed like a sign. Then 7 days later, literally, the world watched as I ran out of that prison with my hands up in the air. I'm not shackled. I see my big family across the street. Didn't know reporters were going to be everywhere. And I'm running. I didn't even look where I was going. They said, what? I was just running across that road.
You're like, I don't care where I'm going, anywhere but here.
But I'm going to tell you, it was a funny thing. I said, that TMZ. TMZ kept playing clips of me running, and then they back it up. And they said, run, Alice, run. But I love them. Wow. But I've been running since that day that I left. Every woman was in. It was the facility held 1,600 women. I think it was about 1,300. They locked them down because all the reporters, I didn't know why they were being locked down. Yeah. But all these women were in the window beating and crying and screaming, yelling, said, Miss Alice, don't forget about us. We love you. And so when I took my hand and did the motion of throwing my heart to them, they started stomping. I'm telling you, literally, Savannah, it felt like an earthquake. I didn't know the ground was moving. They were all stomping and beating. And when I ran across that road, I've been running since. I didn't forget about them. I did not forget about them. I've been running for criminal justice reform. I've been running for change. I've met with the president in the Oval Office numerous of times. I've been on Air Force One with him.
Just think of your life, from a child.
My life.
So now you are on Air Force One.
I'm on Air Force One. They say I went from, because when I was my first few years of life, we had an outhouse. We didn't even have inside toilets. So I literally went from the outhouse to the White House.
Stop it. That is amazing.
From prisoner to being right there talking to President Trump about other cases. I know people wonder sometimes about my relationship with President Trump.
And how, because that was one of the questions was like, How, as a Black woman, can you sit and support him?
He didn't see me as a Black woman. He saw me as a human being. And I saw him as a human being. And that's what I do know. There were no cameras rolling in those meetings with President Trump when I was fighting for the lives of other prisoners. And I tell him about their families. He always was interested in their families, that they have support. I've seen him, and this is the truth, I've seen President Trump with tears in his eyes as I've talked about someone who is in prison who deserves that second chance after I tell him their stories. So I sent over 100 clemency petitions and pardon petitions, clemency and pardons to the White House. I've been able to help 46 people get a second chance.
That is amazing.
It's crazy, but I never stopped fighting, even giving up opportunities that I may have been able to go out and, I would say, leverage my newfound fame.
For money and
I could have done that. I could have gone on with my life because it was Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump, the two most well-known people in the world, the two most influential people in the world. And these are the two people who came together, not for a photo op, but they came together for this woman sitting right here on this sofa to save my life. And I was told that when Kim and Sean told him about me and about my case, he couldn't believe that I'd already at that time spent over 20 years in prison.
And how many days?
I spent 21 years, 7 months, and 6 days. Let me repeat that.
Yeah.
21 years, 7 months, and 6 days in prison. That's how long I was there without a break in that time. And I think that when President Trump saw the support in all of my family waiting out there for me when I ran across that road, that touched his heart.
Yeah.
The one thing that I never did, Savannah, when I was in prison, I never asked a woman about their past. I never wanted to know why they were in prison. From the moment that I met them, that's who you are to me. I don't need to know about your past. I didn't care anything about President Trump or anything, about what people may have said about his past.
Yeah.
The past wasn't important to me. I sat across from President Trump and I talked to him as a human being, and he talked to me as a human being. It was not as a Black woman.
When did you meet President Trump?
I met him for the first time in person when he invited me to the State of the Union address in 2019. I'd been out a few months. I was supposed to be there when he signed the First Step Act. Savannah, I fought so hard for that First Step Act. My face and posters of me were at 66 locations in D.C. And so on the day that he was endorsing it in November, I was in California with Kim, about to film with her for Keeping Up with the Kardashian and to be with an event that was being held pushing for the First Step Act. And so we watched him on TV. I heard him on TV say that it was rehabilitation in that bill. But I asked for sentencing reform because I didn't want there to be another Alice Johnson, another case like Alice Johnson. And I was crying so hard to hear him say that my case, that me as a human influenced him to want there not to be someone who was given such an unjust sentence. Yeah. So, for me, this is more than, it's not politics for me. It's a humanitarian, it's humanity. This is an issue that everyone should care about. Criminal justice reform.
Don't just wait till it happens to you.
Just don't wait till it happens. Do you think that my family was ever involved in this? No. But when it hits home to you, I never thought I would be a prisoner in my life because I didn't have criminal thoughts in my mind.
Yeah.
I did something crazy, made a bad decision, and I don't try to lessen that bad decision, but I definitely did not deserve
life plus 25.
My natural life. In prison, a life sentence is called an unexecuted sentence of death because it is executed at the time of death. I know that I did not deserve that. But because of my suffering, someone else is free today. There are people who have their freedom today. At the very end of President Trump's his time in office, that was his last in January. Me and Ivanka Trump personally worked on so many cases together, trying to help people gain their freedom. As everyone else, as many people were shying away, she was right in there, rolled up her sleeves. I'm always calling her the unsung hero, because in that January, Jared did so many things. He really pushed for the First Step Act because he had been impacted. His father had been a prisoner, so he understood. And it takes people who understand, as you said, don't wait until it happens to you, because it might not happen to you. It might happen to someone else you love.
It may happen to your child.
Thank you. So this has to be a priority, because the justice system has so many things wrong with it right now that we cannot sit and say, it's not me. I'm not concerned about it. I've got good kids. My parents had good kids. Yeah. And I ended up in prison. It's not about something can happen unexpected. Something can happen that is beyond your control or beyond even your knowledge. It could be what accountants are doing. It can be anything, but still, does that deserve these crazy sentences? No. Are your parents a safety risk to the community?
No.
No, this is absolutely insane. And for the many people out there who have loved ones who are incarcerated, I would beg you, don't forget about them.
Don't.
Just because you don't see them, don't forget. And don't just look at a phone call. When I would get even a postcard, a one-page letter, some scribbled stuff from the grandchildren, I loved it. Yeah. Because it's something, when that call is over, I can put on my heart and know that, just remind myself that there's someone out there who loves me still.
Well, I think within the first year or two, most lose contact with their family.
They do. Because they don't see them. And it's very important to that loved one to know that you still remember, care about them. I'm praying for you, because there is power in prayer.
Amen.
I'm a living witness of that.
And what would you say when you got out? Obviously, you've been a fighter your whole life, but what was the hardest obstacle when you got out?
Personally, for me, the hardest obstacle was just, you wouldn't believe, getting identification, getting health care. A lot of people is getting a job, but me, I'm pushed out on a national platform. And so I'm out speaking and I'm working immediately. Yeah. I'm out there, but trying to get identification was really hard. I was only out for a week and I got I don't think it was food poison. I think it was not being used to eating regular food.
What I just spoke to a guy who just got out last week, and the first meal that he ate, he was sick for days.
I was sick and I had to go to the hospital, and I accumulated over a $3,000 hospital bill, and I'm out with no money, and it took me 2 years to pay that bill off. And really, one of the biggest obstacles too is people, how they view you. Yeah. They still want to, even when people have changed. I didn't do anything that some folks may have done when they went to prison that they did when they were very young, but they put this label on you and they call you by what that label is. Employers don't want to hire you because you have ex-felon on there, when they turn out to be some of the most faithful and best employees, because they are so thankful to get that second chance of a job.
Get that second chance at life.
And so I encourage employers, I've talked to corporate heads, encouraging them to hire people who have a record. Give them a chance. As long as they're honest and tell you, why they went and what they've done with their lives. Even though I was serving a life sentence, every time they had a class, I was taking it. Mm-hmm. And they'd ask me, Miss Alice, why are you signing up for these classes? And I'd always make top grades. I signed up for them because I'm preparing myself for a future.
You know what? There's my boyfriend, his dad was the CEO of Flower Foods. And back in the day, he wrote a check for, I think it was like 250, 300 something million dollars to acquire a bread company. And that bread was Dave's Killer Bread.
Oh.
And Dave was a felon. He got out of prison. Couldn't get a job, and so he went back working at his family's bakery. And when he was working at his family's bakery, he came up with the recipe for Dave's Killer Bread, and he started making it and then selling it to grocery stores. And then Flower Foods acquired it for, like I said, 200, 300 something million dollars. And Robert's dad was the one to write the check for that. And he told me a story that when he wrote the check, Flowers, obviously a publicly traded company, like it's a big company. And so at that time, everyone, people on the board, they were like, all right, we brought this in. Now they obviously want to make their money back. They want to multiply it. And they said, all right, let's get rid of all these people who, we got to put other people in higher positions, and we got to, build this business. And Dave, all he hired was convicted felons because he wanted to give them a chance, to have a job. And Robert's dad said, no. He was like, we're not doing that. He said, this is what made this company what it was. This is what made a company that we thought was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're not going to do that.
I'm so thankful he did that.
Yeah.
I've had so many corporate heads thank me for convincing them to hire ex-offenders. And really and truly, they stopped calling people ex-felons. They started calling them justice impacted persons. And it seems like that ex-felon name has been resurrected.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Well, heck, I could talk to you for days, but thank you for coming on. I do want to ask before we wrap up, what is next for you? What do you hope your role can be the next few years?
I don't think I can ever stop fighting for the freedom of those who don't have anyone else fighting for them. But on my own personal journey, I love to get back into, I love theater. I became a well-known playwright in prison. People would have to get tickets to come in and see my plays. So I really want to get back into playwriting. A lot of my life has been put on hold, and I'm ready to do the things that I've been doing. But at the same time, I just want to live life to the fullest. I enjoy my family a lot. I get to travel a lot in the work that I do.
Yeah.
And I've got good friends who take me along with them sometimes.
Hey, you know what? I'm just going to speak and I'm going to say it right now. We're going to see you in the White House.
I will see you in the White House for sure. I'm ready to go back in, and we're not going to stop at the First Step Act. I see so much stuff that has to happen.
I just want to thank you on a personal level, because the First Step Act it gives me a child of someone who's incarcerated. It allows me to look and say, you know what? You may have got 7 years, but you're not going to spend that.
You're not going to.
Because of the First Step Act. And the First Step Act, and I beg and plead the Bureau of Prisons, if they would implement it the way it was designed, so many men and women would be out now.
They would be home now. And to show you, I have to say this about the First Step Act. Over 30,000 people have come home early because of President Trump signing the First Step Act. The recidivism rate is the lowest in history, 9.7% for people who were released on the First Step Act. That report just came out. On a national level, for those who were not released on the First Step Act, the recidivism rate is 43%. Now you tell me.
It works.
It works. That's being smart on crime.
Yeah. Being smart on crime.
Smart on crime.
I love that. Well, Alice, You've got your Instagram going now.
I got my
tagged
Instagram
you.
going. I know a little bit about social media, not a whole lot.
Well, we're going to get you on. We're
I need your
gonna
help.
work.
I need your help.
Hey, I've got you because Alice Marie Free, right?
Alice Marie Free is my Instagram.
That is her Instagram. And it's verified, so y'all go and follow her. I'm going to tag her in all my stuff whenever we post this. But Alice and I, we got a lot of work to do.
We've got so much work to do, and I want to continue to give people hope that I ain't never going to stop fighting for you.
Amen.